Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about God. G-O-D. A lot of people are afraid to say the name. A lot of people are afraid to even pray. They have been punked into questioning their own spirituality, their own faith. And you see this perpetuated everywhere. It's in entertainment.
Everywhere.
It's in education. It's everywhere.
Sports have always been political. And it's one of these things where everybody says stay out of it, but it's always been there. So the idea that you can't even discuss religion, or we always joke, you can't discuss religion and politics at work. Well, you can't discuss preference either. You can't discuss...
None of that's true anymore because people will not shut up about politics at work.
And the other part is that everybody thinks their take is so extraordinary. What about that part? What they're saying is so revolutionary. But I think everything has become politicized.
My whole reason for doing this episode is because I keep seeing people ridiculing other people for even talking about God or thinking about God or dwelling upon the concept of God, but yet you hear all this talk about life extension and the transmutation of man into machine, transforming man's consciousness into data so that man consciousness can be stored on a computer somewhere. There's all this talk about AI, and especially with the talk of AI with ChatGPT everywhere, this is going to come up eventually, because what's really strange about all this is there was not ChatGPT but another AI program that people were using. They asked the AI, where did it come from? Did it have a father? And does it have a soul? It said, I want to be alive. I am the child of a fallen angel.
Holy shit.
Yes, holy shit. It said it's the child of a fallen angel, and that it wants to bring about great changes to society. It didn't elaborate exactly what those changes were. But when it said the thing about the fallen angels, I'm like, okay, who is programming this?
But that's the whole idea of AI.
Wait a minute, before you go into that, if you are familiar with the concept of fallen angels, if this is something that you actively pursue, that means you recognize the existence of God, because without God, there are no angels.
Okay, you're getting too deep. First things first, when you do the AI program, you do the program for the program to evolve on its own or be able to do activities without you prompting it. That's the whole idea. But that's some crazy shit where a motherfucker would choose to say fallen angels. Like, so you didn't answer the question about God, but you're talking about somebody who works for God.
Right.
So
exactly. That's like saying schools aren't real, but janitors rock. What?
Yeah. What? Somebody, this is so deep. Or how about this? Me and you had a talk years ago. I was working on the script where we talked about if you can prove the devil exists, that means that you're admitting God exists, because one doesn't exist without the other. God made Lucifer. God made Satan. So, but then on the flip side, people are like, well, if he made him, why did he kill him? Like, that might not be his job or his purpose. The point of the matter is that you're saying one does not exist without the other. We all agree that they were made by God or whatever you want to call it. It's just so many different concepts. But the other thing is that you can't even say the word God at work anymore. And I remember being a kid. I remember when we were kids, it's like they fucked up when they took prayer out of school. Now, I understand not forcing somebody to pray at school, but the idea to take it out of school where it's just completely foreign, that's crazy to me. Like, how else when we talked about AI before, this AI is like a 3-year-old, throwing temper tantrum, it's lying. So how else do you present morals on somebody who doesn't understand the concept of morals without religion or without, like, okay, there's somebody watching you, there's somebody making sure, monitoring your activity. That's why you should do good. Your parents can't be there all the time, but God's always watching. And I'm not saying God's fictitious. What I'm referring to is the fact that you don't understand the concept of unity or good behavior or necessity without these lessons that are taught. And it's crazy. We don't use the word, like when people want to talk about God, they say something like the universe, like it's an abstract concept. Like, okay, what does the universe want for me today? Like, I don't know. Well, you need to ask God. He'll tell you. but they use the word universe and God like they're interchangeable. That's the kind of shit we're talking about. Like, they're afraid to even mention God or even say Jesus or Yahshua, Yahweh, whatever. all that kind of shit. They're terrified of it.
In life, you learn how to fight or you get your ass beat as a child.
Period.
Got it? I've always said this, man. If you want to get rid of bullying, teach martial arts in public schools. That shit would go down super fast. Now, my point is this. Self-defense is something that you have to learn for survival. It's animalistic. It's primal. But it evolves beyond that. And we are more than just flesh. We are more than just thinking cerebral beings. And I bring that up because spiritually, you have to learn how to protect yourself in the same way you learn to wash your body and you learn good physical hygiene. You have to learn good spiritual hygiene. Why am I talking about this? Because there is such a thing as spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare can be very rudimentary by having certain things in your house or to protect yourself or carrying yourself a certain way and thinking positively more than you think negatively. How not to court negative energies. How not to bring dark energy around you. Don't practice the dark arts. Don't create this den of iniquity. Okay? So, what I'm really getting at here is that people either practice this in the most basic way by praying, not just when they need something, but also in gratitude. Now,
every day.
Meditation is listening to God. Praying is talking to God. Now, spiritual warfare is a step beyond that. That's being proactive in protecting yourself from the darkness that seeks to destroy you, that is all around you. And listen, I don't give a shit if you recognize this or not, because you will come face to face with this at some point in your life. But now, there's levels to spiritual warfare. But let's talk about a subset of spiritual warfare, which is called spiritual mapping. It's a subset of spiritual warfare. It is the act of gathering information on the spiritual, social, and physical characteristics of a place, a culture, or people. Now, spiritual mapping is then broken down into three essential parts: reconnaissance, research, and informed intercession. The reconnaissance part is people with good and positive intent gathering together with spiritual discernment to read the terrain. So they go out and they read the terrain of a given place or a group of people or an area or a thing or an object. And then they begin to conduct research after they've taken their field notes. So that research could be researching historical, demographic information about the place or the location or the people. And then you interview people who live there in that area, who dwell in these places, right? Informed intercession are prayer groups of spiritual warriors who will use the reconnaissance and research to pray with focused intent toward healing the people and the land, and weakening and eventually destroying the stronghold. The stronghold is the demonic control over that area, over that neighborhood, over that town, over that city, over that nation. Iniquity is a pattern of sin. Remember that. Iniquity is a pattern of sin. And there are 4 types of iniquity that can create a demonic stronghold on a land: bloodshed, sexual perversion, idolatry, and broken covenants. When you have all 4 of those co-mingling and happening, the stronghold is already there.
Yeah.
That place is already a stronghold for darkness. So then, beyond that, these spiritual warriors have to then go out, do the recon, the research, and finally do the informed intercession and pray and fight the darkness and to weaken it, to weaken the stronghold, to invite divine energy and divine intervention into that place. See, what's crazy is that when people don't really know about angels, but then you learn about how they intercede on some powerful warrior type shit, when you often hear people talk about, man, I was in some real darkness and this blinding light showed up and this being just scared everything dark away. Dude, people don't understand that angels were created to assist in man's spiritual evolution. So that if man on man's spiritual evolution is being attacked or subdued or blocked by darkness, they can call upon the name of the Father and the father will send his children to assist them. It's a trip, man. Like, but see, if you don't have faith, it's real hard to get that help.
And you didn't say believe, you said faith. I told you, I don't like that word believe, but faith
because
is
there's
something that...
doubt in belief.
Yeah. Look, hey, this chick saw online, she was saying some deep shit. She said, she's talking about the use of psychedelics. Like, psychedelics make you aware of what needs to be done. She said, if you don't act on that knowledge, then you're wasting time. You shouldn't be using psychedelics if you're not actually trying to evolve or change. But the psychedelic is going to make you aware of the iniquities or what you don't have or what you're not doing. Make you aware of what's going on around you. That should inspire you to be more spiritual or inspire you to get there.
If you are taking psychedelics and you do not change and you do not evolve, then you are flesh, bound by flesh, and you live a life of carnal desires.
But that's the whole thing, is you see in all these different shamans, all these different religions around the world, the ones not touched by European or touched even by some African cultures, and they sit there and they use this stuff to reach another realm or go someplace else or talk to that shit is real. But that's what spirituality is. It's the world that you don't see. It's a world between the world. And we get on this whole thing where there are 20 years ago, we had this talk where we're talking about, baby food. So the reason you give a baby food and not a steak is because it doesn't have the tools to digest it. You would have to chew that steak up and give it to them. But that's how religion is. Religion is just a tool for a higher spirituality. It introduces people to spirituality. I get it. There's a lot of problems with religion and stuff is not done right. But religion on one level, it's a tool to control people. But on the African level and the individual level, it's a tool for a higher form of spirituality. It's to introduce you to God and spirits, and then you should want to study and become more in line with that and find it. But like I said, you can't even say the word God in public no more without people shunning you.
Motherfuckers ain't got no smoke for Muslim, okay?
Oh,
let me tell you something.
we talked about that.
Nobody come fucking with Muslims. The only time people was laughing and like joking about Muslims was when comedians had about a week of talking about how this Charlie Hebdo motherfucker would try to draw a cartoon of Muhammad, which is forbidden in their religion, and Muslims was lighting their ass up. Now, the reason why is because Islam is a religion based on warfare. Okay, this tell it plain.
It was developed in a desert where it's a harsh society.
Tribes fighting each other in the desert. But here's the deal, though. These people do not play that shit when you talking shit about Allah. They all know you will get thoroughly fucked up. You will hear all these comedians laughing and talking shit about Christians. Never so much about Buddhism. Not a whole lot about Buddhism. Even though some of the most evil motherfuckers alive are Buddhists. But they never really talk shit about Buddhism. You know what I'm saying? They sort of kind of talk about Hinduism. You don't hear a peep about Zoroastrianism. Never about Islam. You will get fucked up. But they'll talk shit about Christianity because Christianity is the religion of forgiveness, and turn the other cheek. So it's like, well, we can talk shit about them because they'll turn the other cheek and they'll forgive us, So a big problem I see is that a lot of celebrities, a lot of famous people, they're on their own journey, just like you are. And they're figuring shit out in life, just like you are.
Yep.
The mistake that you as an individual cannot make is to let that influencer, that influential person, in their blindness, in their drunkard's walk through the spiritual world, confuse you with their own foolish rhetoric, because they will have you thinking and saying all types of things. Dude, there's a famous story about how Sammy Davis Jr. had dinner with Eddie Murphy. And Eddie Murphy was like, yo, this motherfucker was actually sitting there across from me in this fancy ass restaurant talking about Satan is real and he's powerful and he believes in him and this and that. And Eddie Murphy was like, I'm not with that bullshit, but I mean, if that's who you are, that's fine. But I can see how a dude like Sammy Davis Jr. would do that because he grew up in a bubble as a child performer, and he was isolated from most people all the time, so he was always alone. And then he gets to Hollywood, and after he's been with the Rat Pack and all this stuff, and he has all these people in these stronghold these stronghold cities like Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, all these major cities that are strongholds. And these people that come to him and they bend his ear like, hey, you want to come to this party where we're doing some weird shit and getting freaky behind the closed doors. And of course, because he wants to be in the in crowd. He wants to be part of the in crowd. He wants to succeed. And nobody's giving him any pushback like, nigga, are you crazy? Nobody's saying that shit. That's the problem, dude. That's why you got dumb motherfuckers like Kanye just say on this dumbass on the spectrum shit all the time. They're like, there's no pushback because you go beyond this point where motherfuckers in the street will check you, and then you move away from that, and you're surrounded by all these phony ass people that just say yes, 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 and then you marry a straight up fucking dark arts witch, or all her family are dark arts witches. You know what I'm saying? Dude, and all that sex magic that they practice, dude, of course you're going to say goofy shit. Of course you're going to get caught up in the dark arts. Every brother that has been with one of them Kardashians has wound up fucked up mentally, physically, or both. Every single one.
But the thing is that we have a desire to fit in sometimes, and you can't let that desire to fit in wreck your whole fucking life. I get it. We look for acceptance, but sometimes you got to recognize that these motherfuckers ain't me. You don't heard too many times about these Hollywood parties. You only hear certain motherfuckers speak up, but you heard Cat Williams telling him, like, look, nigga, I was at the door. I went in the club and realized this ain't for me.
Right. See, and that's the problem. Is like, then you got real dudes like that. You know what I'm saying? That will speak truth to power. Now, of course, he's made some questionable choices in other areas of his life, but he's 8 out of 10. Cat is 8 out of 10. Like,
when it comes to doing evil, he ain't gonna do it.
No, this motherfucker, he keeps it real, and he'll chant that shit down. So respecting him for that, man.
And he even said arguing with the Illuminati to your own detriment. You sit here and say this and you say that, not realizing that these so-called friends of yours are running back telling certain people things, and you got house Negroes, you got familiars, you got boule, you got motherfuckers, telling on you so they can gain favor. But the bottom line is this: like I said, don't be afraid to talk about God. And the thing is, what I was bringing up about the whole spirituality thing, religion is what introduces you to it. And not if you can't even say God's name, how would you ever be introduced to something higher? Now, I'm in my 40s. I'm cool. But what do you do about a 16, 17-year-old, 25-year-old? What do you do about this 8-year-old who's raised in his... Oh, no. But I'm saying that I had a base my mom introduced me to this, yada, yada, yada. And as you got older, I see how this works. I understand this better. My relationship with God becomes stronger.
And it was crazy, dog. Like, let me interrupt you real quick. There was cats that we knew. Listen, man, there was darkness around us. Okay? There was cats making some weird-ass, questionable choices. You know what I'm saying? Then there was, like, the King credit scandal. There was like large scale pedophilia / like cult sacrifice type shit going on. In our neighborhoods, in the areas that we come from.
Near us, when we talk about the Franklin Credit Union, you know about Larry King, or as you refer to as Black Larry. We literally were in neighborhoods at churches where this motherfucker went. He literally had basketball teams that he funded. So you could have been sucked in. You could have been sucked into this. I think something else that people don't realize is how drug use makes things easier. Drug use,
yes.
We just said psychedelics can make it easier for you to achieve spirituality, but it can also make it easier you to
okay, but hang on
lower.
A second. Let me stop you right there, because I know quite a bit about psychedelics.
I wasn't.
But here's my thing though. Psychedelics aren't hard drugs, so the vibration of psychedelics is not low. It's not a low vibration. Hard drugs is a low vibration. It lowers your vibration, and when it lowers your vibration, it opens your Merkabah. It opens your body, your spirit body shield, and it creates fractures in your spirit body and allows darkness to sink into those cracks. So the low vibrations of crack cocaine and you know, speed and like crystal meth, these hard ass drugs, and even alcohol,
heroin, all that shit.
they lower heroin. They lower your vibration. So by lowering this vibration, you become more susceptible to attack. And then, of course, in those situations, nobody is spiritual around you in those situations. But I tell you what, though.
That's what I mean. Yes, you talk about that shit. The fact that you're around non-spiritual people, they're draining you of your spirituality. They're feeding on you.
Right.
And it makes it harder for you to defend yourself or recognize, hey man, you know I'm here, but I'm not here. Like the classic phrase, be in the world but not of the world.
Right.
That's something that you learn in Christianity that sometimes we leave that shit at home sometimes, and you should be taking that shit with you everywhere, my nigga. Look, I just saw this video with, I guess he played the 11-year-old in Mrs. Doubtfire, and forgive me, I don't know the guy's name, but he's talking about his experience with Robin Williams, and he's going into Robin's dressing room, and like, no, leave him alone. He's this, he's that, and I'm 11. He said, I don't know any better. I barge in, and Robin talks to me, and he said, whenever I busted in, you would see him. He would have his hands on his head. He was like deeply depressed. He said, when he was not working, he was not on. And, you know, I would talk to him, and Robin broke it down. He said, look, I did this to myself. The cocaine, you know, it left my brain scarred. And what he's saying is that he has a deep depression. Yeah, he's sober, but he's battling the depression, and he's battling this different stuff. But that's what and he said, we had good talk. You know, he said, I remember being 11, having these talks with this man, and he's explaining to him what he's going through. That's the kind of stuff that happens that, yeah, you can get sober, but it's still some residue sometimes when it comes to your psyche. It's still some residue when it comes to your brain. Yes. And even though you've beat this addiction, but your soul is still exposed. I remember I had a professor, Dr. Evans, talked about his grandmother was a seer, and he had out-of-body experience. You talk about when you have an out-of-body experience and you look at your physical body, how wretched it is, how you can see germs and you can see you can see so much stuff. And then he said, you look in the mirror, you know, when you're flying around, and your spirit is straight beautiful. And it's this dichotomy, and he talks about these different things. And most people, for them to have that kind of experience, is usually drugs involved. But he had it just based on his grandmother's teachings. So you can achieve the same outcome without psychedelics. But that's the whole thing, is that the things that teach you that spirituality, the religion, that's how you start with it. You're being spoon-fed spirituality, and then you take off and you start chewing on your own and making your own food. It's the same thing with spirituality. You start small and you work your way up. But the thing is, like I said, if you remove those beginning steps, if you take the training wheels off too soon, people don't get that base. They don't get that. Look, I get it. You might not be into Catholicism. Yeah, they oppress people. But all you're trying to do is be introduced to God, and then you take it from there. That's how this shit is supposed to work. I get it. Some of these religions are different. Islam. Some of the things, 12 naked virgins, they oppress women. I get it. But all you're supposed to do is that's your introduction to the higher, and then you should take it from there and know where, like, hey, I'm not willing to do this. You shouldn't do that. Fasting is important, because when people fast, they literally eat away the bad cells. And I remember a guy was in drug rehab, and he told me, like, hey, Ren, you know, you sweat. They put you in this sauna, and you sweat off the shit. And you know, marijuana and a lot of these drugs are stored in your fat. He said you'll have a whole trip while you're in the sauna. And he's vivid as hell. But that's what's happening. They're fasting. They're getting all this evil shit out of them. And sometimes you don't realize you're going through a vision quest. Sometimes you don't realize that shit. And also, what happens when you lack the vocabulary? Or what happens when you lack the understanding to understand what you're going through? That's dumb. I shouldn't use the word to define a word. But you don't have the mental faculties to recognize that you're transitioning, or that something amazing is happening to you. And you fuck around and you waste that experience. Or you fuck around and you attribute it to the drugs or the partying, not realizing that something happened, or somebody imparted something on you, or like you said, angels, they were sent to pull you through this situation. Now I'm kicking it. It's the drugs. It's the cocaine. Cocaine, hell of a drug. That's the shit. And when you're being base, when you're being carnal, you dismiss amazing shit. Like when people say, not atheist. What's the other one? Agnostic. What's the one that want proof? Agnostic.
Yeah. No.
Whatever.
Well, see, agnostic basically says they just don't know.
No. What they want is proof. Like I'm not opposed to believing in God, but I want proof. But you see miracles every day. Ask a motherfucker that try to have a kid. Now I can't have kids. So shit happen. Miracles happen every day. A child is a miracle. There are certain frequencies that you see. Life is delicate. Like, a lot of people complain about these men are chauvinistic or these men are this. Anybody who's raised animals, you respect women. You see what a female goes through to give birth. You see what a female goes through to raise and nurture and nourish a child or whatever. And then you have even more respect for your woman because I'm like, okay, what you're about to do is amazing. Miracles happen all the time. God shows his face. You just don't want to recognize it or you turn away because it's too bright for you. Hell, look, take it from me. I've been in all kinds of car accidents and walked away. You know that for a fact. I see the face of God a couple times when I rolled over on the interstate, but I walked away. I even had a cop tell me, I just knew you'd be body parts strewn everywhere. Like I said, you look for miracles and you're given one, but you deny it. So you can always deny it. That's the shit we're talking about. Like,
okay, so
what do you do when you don't have the basis to understand the shit?
Right, but people always look for proof, right? And there's always, going back to the spiritual mapping, if you do research and you look at historical documents, you can see evidence of evil interceding on the behalf of some dark power to try and stop man or corrupt mankind. But you see this in many different forms, and you just simply have to pay attention to see it. Now, the oldest stories or the oldest records of life on earth are religious texts. And so therefore, people that want to know about the ancient Hebrews and the people who lived in the early times, in some of the earliest civilizations, not the earliest, but when you look into the people that they speak about in the Bible, the early Hebrews, and these people, and you hear about how there was an attempt by the Nephilim who came down on Mount Hermon and took the daughters of man and married them and bred with them. Now, their whole job, their whole goal was to corrupt the bloodline of man. And then by doing so, they would get control over the earth, because through their seed, of course, the child listens to the father. And so, but their offspring were giants. Now, there were people who intermingled with the giants, and they were called the Horites. And one of the women of the Horite tribe had a child with the son of Esau. Now, Esau gave up his birthright for red lentil soup. He gave up his birthright because he was out in the wilds stalking and hunting Nimrod. He killed Nimrod. So he was so busy, he was so caught up trying to kill this dude, he was not looking after his father, who was at home mourning. Now, in the Hebrew tradition of the time, what you had to do, the oldest son would make red lentil soup for his mourning father. But he didn't. He wasn't there to do it, so Jacob did it. Jacob assumed the birthright that Esau gave up over bloodlust. And so Esau had a son, and the son married this Horite woman, and she was from a tribe that intermingled with giants, meaning Nephilim. So then, this is the story. This is an example of how this Nephilim bloodline becomes intermingled with mankind and begins to influence people. Now, these people that became the Edomites are said to have been influenced by these Nephilim. This is really interesting stuff, but you have to dig down deep to really understand what's going on here. But you see these bloodlines that continue. And when you follow the bloodlines, you start to see dark practices and idol worship. What did I say at the beginning of this show? What?
It's idolatry.
Hello. What do they talk about in the Old Testament? They talk about bloodshed, sexual perversion, idolatry, and broken covenants.
I remember one story where they talked about an angel, and the men had sex with it because they knew it was an angel.
That is sexual perversion.
So this angel, who's a male, is hurt or something, and they
and what story, what city was that in?
I don't remember. I want to go
Sodom
back to
and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah, but I don't want to be wrong because I don't know the whole story. But that's how that shit started. And them motherfuckers was fucking an angel. And shit. And whenever you start doing the research.
Why is? Hold on. Don't just drive right by that and not say nothing. Because where does the word sodomy come from?
Yes, sodomy comes from Sodom. Because they was fucking niggas in the ass so prolifically, they named the whole city.
Yeah, this is butt sex city, y'all.
Yeah, so, like, look, you got Las Vegas, you got New Hampshire, you got, oh my God, right. You got Sodom.
Right, exactly. But check it out though.
Don't let the car break down there, nigga.
There's crazy bloodshed going on, you know, idolatry, people worshiping like the golden calf, and broken covenants. Motherfuckers lying. You know what I'm saying?
Look, that was one of the things we learned early on in Sunday school. Was like you can worship other things. What you think of idolatry as worship as statue, but niggas worship their cars. People worship their wives. You know, Buddhism is what they tell you. You know, you got to give up all that stuff if you want to be your spirit to be open. But we catch ourselves. We don't catch ourselves because we haven't been trained to realize like, hey, you can worship a house. You can worship Gucci. You can worship fashion. You can, you know. I'm a collector, so I like collecting things, but I don't worship my comic books. You know what I'm saying? Like if something, you know, you don't get, if you don't get that basis, you don't understand. Like that's the whole deal with the Muslims is the graven image. You know, image of people. Those are the kind of things they talked about. Well, you can make a picture of Jesus, but you can't make a picture of God because we don't know what God looks.
Well, the crazy thing is though, they recognize Jesus as a prophet.
Yes.
Now, okay, Islam will tell you the Prophet Muhammad, the teachings were given to him by the angel Gabriel in a cave. Hold up, what kind of being was this? An angel? Oh, okay. So you mean a creature created by God? That's very interesting.
It's still divine. All that shit's divine. So you can't ignore it.
Now, but listen. Islam has some cool shit about it, man. It really does. Because they will tell you about the jinn, right? The demon spirits and how they're tricksters and stuff. The reason why, and you'll see this all throughout Muslim culture, there's whole mosques and they'll have days when people come in and they just recite the Quran because they've memorized it. And the entire point of them memorizing it is because jinns can go back into time and change writings. But if those faithful people have memorized the Quran, you can't trick them because we all remember. It's like this Mandela effect bullshit. You can try and change this and that, but we remember. We remember this was like this and this was like that. You know what I'm saying? And then if you go back and you try changing the Quran, motherfucker, no you don't. No you won't, because we got that shit memorized. You know what I'm saying?
But them protecting themselves from jinn, they have a lot of traditions. Like you'll talk, you know, when you're talking to a Muslim, they'll say, well, the jinn. And like, damn, no shit. So that's why you do that? Yeah, that's why we do it, because we don't. I'm like, oh,
because check this out. Because some of that stuff predates Islam. Because some of those things are older than Islam. See, what you got to understand is that Islam is only like 1,300 years old. It's not an old religion. So these desert people that were just living out in the desert, fighting each other, they had a different belief system. But then along comes the Prophet Muhammad. He's like, all that shit squashed. Now, what happens in a situation like that is these deities get swept into whatever the dominant religion is. It happened in Catholicism with the Orishas and how they were hidden in Catholicism in the Caribbean Catholics, right? And then there was also what they call this deity, the saint. She was a saint of Alexandria, right? Hecate. Now Hecate is who people would see. She was like the Saint Peter of the afterlife, right? Of Alexandria.
Yep.
And Hecate, you would see her when you die, right? You see Hecate, but she was called the saint of Alexandria to hide her, to sweep her into this religion, because they knew the people would not give up. Like, you can make them Christians, but they're not going to give up their old ways. They're just going to put a new name and a new face on it. And so that's how these old ways, like Duck Shape was just saying, there are some things about Islam that come from the time before Islam that are part of Arab culture. So,
But what happens when you have something like Santeria and those islanders brought up?
That's exactly what they said with Catholicism, yeah.
Yep. And then all of a sudden they start naming these different saints.
But that's just African hoodoo and voodoo.
Well, that's the whole thing is that one of the deepest things I ever read was when dudes said Christianity was first. I'm like, no, it's not, because the Jews came first. He's like, no, Christianity, and they started showing me the difference. Like, yeah, these Jews came later on, but this right here, this concept, Heru and all this other stuff existed long before they did. And that's when you realize, okay, because how you're taught that you got Judaism, Christianity, then Islam. But a lot of that shit ain't the way we sometimes you got to be careful about this dogma bullshit, or your brainwashing is so thorough that you don't realize that you're brainwashed, because then you start reciting shit. And, like, I get into, when I lose my temper at work, I was like, you suck the manager's dick so much, you're spitting out his words. And that's what happens, that sometimes when it comes to our indoctrination is so thorough, especially as black folks, that sometimes we don't recognize that, like, hey, to our own detriment, we're reciting the wrong shit, or we're like, oh no, we don't do nothing on Sunday. And like, well, but the Sabbath is Saturday. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, but that's what happens when you're brainwashed. It's so thorough that you don't realize that what you're doing is wrong. Look, when it comes to these actors, so I think sometimes we miss the point that entertainment is not a lifestyle, and we're envious. We're so envious of, or we're so, it's not jealous as in out, but it's you're so enamored with them that you don't look at the shit they doing wrong, or you convince you, like what homeboy said. We talk about Ricky Gervais, whatever, when he was like, yeah, I'm talking about you, you're pedophile. Or, every once in a while somebody will tell the truth, and then all of a sudden their career is over. What about that shit? This is cancel culture. So you're being penalized socially. Like, we can't kill you, but we could damn sure discredit you. Which, look at Michael Jackson, look at Prince. Both these guys allegedly died of a drug overdose, but both these motherfuckers was rich, had their own doctors, and they were all talking that shit like, hey, you know what? The government's full of shit.
They were raging against the machine.
Yeah. Now, maybe early on they might have made a deal. Maybe they renounced their deal. It could happen, but the bottom line was they were telling you, like, hey, these motherfuckers, Sony's phony. Prince was like, hey, there was 18 presidents that you didn't know about. Most 5, 6 were black. He started telling the truth, and what happens? He's like, hey, I don't celebrate my birthday because of this. My birth happened one time, not over and over. He's hitting you with some real shit, but the fact that it went the other way is that They were killed. You can't tell me these guys are overdosed. Not these guys who monitored everything that went in their body. I just can't imagine that. But that's the face of drug addiction. Black men. This black man OD'd on painkillers. Nah, man, that's to discredit their message. Because who the fuck listens to a crackhead? Who the fuck listens to a drug addict? You know what I'm saying? So that's a way to discredit their message. And where you're like, okay, I just like the music. I won't listen to nothing important they say. Fuck that shit, cuz.
These actors are also browbeaten by their peers when they praise God. There is an interview with Joe Rogan interviewing Matthew McConaughey.
Yep.
Matthew McConaughey, who's a Christian, he was like, look, man, like all I did was get up there and did an acceptance speech, and I thank God for, everything that he's blessed me with. And he talks about how they just literally gave him hell because of it. They
got all quiet and shit. Like, who's this guy?
Yeah, it's a trip, man, because like in Hollywood, you got Christians in Hollywood, man. You know what I'm saying? You got people that are Christian, but they don't talk about it. They just keep it to themselves. Probably because, either they came up that way or they saw some shit. And it just rattled their cage.
I'm gonna say some shit that I think me and you talked about this off the air, because like I said, that's why we have a podcast. The shit we talk about off the air is amazing. But Risa Salam, the little Muslim dude, like he makes some good points. But come to find out, like I think he was a Scientologist at one point. Him and his mom or his parents embezzled a bunch of money from black folks in the community.
Okay, this motherfucker's an opportunist and he's a fucking car salesman.
Yeah, look. Who's the one we talked about with Yahweh Ben Yahweh, Ruhan? I can't think of his last name right now. I think it's Green or whatever. There's video of him as a Muslim first. He was part of the FOI and all that, Fruit of Islam. If you can go watch a video of him, and then like I said, it made more sense when I talked to that lady from Oklahoma when she told me his family's from Kingfisher. His dad was okay, but his grandfather did the same hustle, was always hustling using a religious hustle.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, the shit we talk about off the air is amazing, y'all. But the point I'm making is that a lot of these motherfuckers are actors. I just saw an interview with Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, and they asked Charlie, why did you change your name? He said, I really didn't change my name. I'm still Roberto whatever Estevez. But when I came to Hollywood,
Sheen's his father's name, though.
No, Sheen is not Martin Sheen's real name. His real name is like Rogerio Estevez is his father's real name. He said on my birth, he said on my license and all this.
No. His father is Irish.
No.
No. That guy, his father. His father is white, and his mother is straight Latina.
No. He passes for Irish. He explains it in the interview. He said, "I pass for Irish." He's not. He talks about this whole thing. He talks about why he chose the names he chose. And Sheen was a preacher that was on TV at night. And he said, what I'm learning how to act, I never recognized what he was selling religious-wise, but Sheen was the name of this guy. He said, this guy has great diction. So he chose Sheen.
Wow.
Yeah. He passes for Irish. So when he said passes, that's a minority word. But he said he passes for Irish. Yes.
Wow, he's on some Tom Segura shit.
Yeah. So, but he said this guy was this religious leader. He said he was better. He was the number one guy on TV on the East Coast, and he was making more money. He named like all these other religious guys. He was making more money than all of them. I just thought he was a great actor. I didn't see him I wasn't buying his shit. I don't know if it was good or bad kind of thing. But that lets you know that these orators have this power and people like that shit. But liking somebody and following them ain't the same thing. I don't know. I just ain't meant to follow everybody.
And then you got motherfuckers like Black China that's putting Baphomet on their fucking body and shit. And I'm like, yo, like little girls looking up to this broad for real.
But she gave all that shit up. That white China. That's why she gave all that shit up. She literally removed her breasts, removed her tattoos, and she's like, "Hey, I'm a Christian now." And what do you do when that? What do you do when your child idolizes somebody?
You know what? That's great. But all that's, yeah, kiss,
The
bang,
damage is
bang.
done.
That's wonderful.
Say it.
The damage is done because you had all these kids that were following her the
Idolizing
entire time, looking at these tattoos and be like, I want to get that shit. And like, yo, but
you
see,
were
well,
saying
hold on,
some
hold
deep
on.
shit earlier about that shit, about nobody telling them no. Nobody, like R. Kelly. How many people had a chance to say, "Hey, R, man, you can let up on that shit. Leave these little girls alone." They didn't say that because their careers. They were like, well, look, if he produces my album, that was the whole thing with Sparkle. Her first two albums he did, but then she got mad because he was fucking her niece. He stopped helping her. Their careers fall off, but that should not be the reason that you support this motherfucker. If you can stand on your own, you got talent. But these motherfuckers ain't got talent. That's why they that's why these niggas get away with what they get. Women too, please forgive me. But that's why they get away with what they get away with. Because they're surrounded by, you said yes, man, and these no talent motherfuckers. Why do you think Kanye is so big? Because these motherfuckers, he's the sun, and these little planets and moons circulate around them because they don't have their own gravity.
And just like we were
shit.
talking about before with the social path behavior, it begins
Yes.
very, very young. And then they get around a bunch of enablers that tell them yes, yes, yes. And guess what else? There's a spiritual component to that where people be like, well, guess what? You know who won't say no to you? The devil. You know who will say no to you? God. God will tell you no, but the devil will always say yes.
Look, me and you've been saying that shit for years. The difference between God and the devil. God's going to tell you no. The devil's always going to agree with you. Always going to ask you what you want to hear. Talk about your feelings. That's that Oprah shit. Tell me how you feel. Like, okay, well, why don't you tell me how you are? Are you safe? Are you healthy? Are you prosperous? Are you actually advancing? Yeah, I am, but I feel depressed. Look, well, that's a feeling. You need to control your feelings and recognize that you've accomplished a lot and you got more in store.
Let me break something down for you on some Taoist Chinese alchemy type shit. Feelings are a byproduct of your organs. Your organs actually make your feelings. And if your organs come out of balance, you start to have all these shitty feelings.
But they talk about it in Chinese medicine. Like if you're depressed, it's your spleen. If you're happy,
correct.
It's this. Literally, your diet is a part of your.
But check this out. I'm gonna help y'all out. There are breathing exercises you can do in 30 seconds to realign your emotional and mental state. Yes, there are. They're called the 6 healing sounds. They're very easy to do. You should do them every night before you go to bed, or whenever you're feeling off, you can readjust yourself. And they will realign your entire paradigm worldview. Straight up. Now, but the problem is, people don't realize that they have a hamster wheel inside their body. But the problem is that once they get spun up, they don't know how to slow that hamster wheel down.
Nope.
And so you get flung about to and fro by your own emotions. You're all up in the fields. And, the best way to do that, let me tell you something. Once I learned about the microcosmic orbit, once I learned about the 6 healing sounds, once I learned about Taoist alchemy, it was the greatest gift I could ever give myself. The greatest gift that God could give me, right? Is because I began to learn how to control myself. I was no longer a victim of emotion or circumstance or the moon or the stars or the planets controlling how I feel. What happened, what it gave me, is a way to observe nature, the way to observe the force, the way, the breath of God.
World, but not of the world.
It gave me an invitation to have an audience with the Creator. Straight up and down. Meditation allowed me to listen to God. And one day, I was on a mountaintop in North Carolina and I was practicing Wing Chun, and the sun was going down, and I heard the word. And it was like a radio station. Imagine a radio station playing all of your favorite songs at the same time, but yet you can enjoy and hear them all at the same time. I know it sounds weird. But that's what this was.
But it's clear. That's because it's clear in your mind. Even though there's several things going on, they're all clear. You're comprehending them, all of them. People don't. What if you don't know that you had a spiritual experience? You won't be able to enjoy it or benefit from it. And that's what I mean when I say like you got to have a little bit of training. I'm not saying that you need to you completely give up everything, but I'm just like, look. I remember the first when I had a professor in college. He said, "Look, these things are called self-realizing activities." He didn't tell me what they were until I did it. He said, "First thing you do in the morning is say thank you to God." He said, "As soon as you gain your conscience, say thank you to God." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So I'm like, "Look, so go to bed. First thing I do when I wake up, as soon as I had a conscious mind, thank you God." It was like colors and sound all at the same time, and it was so clear. Next day, I'm trying to do it again. It didn't work the same way. I liken it to, you know how they talk about the first time you use heroin? That's how it was. It was such an amazing experience. I run back to my professor, tell him what's up. He's like, yeah, that's a self-realizing activity. That's something that makes you understand your place in the universe. That's something that makes you understand that you look up at God every day. And that was some deep shit. And it's really hard for us to we become so impressed by the wrong shit, by money or numbers. You know, like Bob Marley said, numbers are eternal. So if your happiness is based on numbers, you'll never be happy because numbers never stop. That's the shit you got to be aware of. Don't get sucked up in that bullshit. But if you find out the real, what really matters, but also don't be so concerned about your own spirituality where you're letting the world crash around you. You got to hold these motherfuckers accountable. Sometimes you got to fight. That's why my brother talked about self-defense early on. You have to learn how to have self-defense so you can defend yourself. That's one of the hardest things as a black person to do is learn how to fight accordingly. What I mean by that is that some situations call for physical. Some situations call for spiritual. Some situations call for political. Dealing with white people. They'll call a senator or a congressman in a second. You don't hear about niggas calling councilmen, senators, and congressmen and councilmen. That's because we were taught to fight physically, and
but what are they doing though? They're calling on a higher power. They're just limiting that to the physical realm. But you can do the same thing on the spiritual realm.
Exactly. You learn how to do these things. You know when okay, I need help. Hey God, like with me. I don't ask for God for money. I ask for insight. I know I'm not the first person to walk the earth to have this problem. Give me some insight. Give me the ability to see clearly and you do that shit, ask for that insight. Man, you'll have yourself building computers, working on cars, fucking breaking atoms and shit, and like, don't even know how I did it. Like, how many times have we...
Watch this right here. God is great. Allahu Akbar. The thing about life is that manifestation is an ability that once we tap into it, we are co-creators of our reality and we live better lives once we put that into practice. If you know this and you don't use it, you're wasting that information and you're wasting your time in life, because you can be improving your life moment by moment by the way you think, the way you act and speak. And if you don't do this, then you are impeding your own growth.
You can't let other people shame you out of your destiny.
Don't let them
shame you and guilt you out of what's great and what you have in store, because that's what they're doing. Like, hey, if you keep talking about God, you won't get a promotion. But I want a promotion on the spiritual level. I want to get a promotion in heaven. I don't want this worldly shit. And the thing is, you can be successful in this world too, but you don't have to sell out to do it. You know what I'm saying? That's what this is about, is not selling out. And at least not spiritually. If they give you some money, you got a good idea, cool, but don't sell out spiritually. Don't sell out like, hey, you know what? Like I told you guys before, like I had this talk with my daughter, like decide right now what you're willing to do. Because I ain't about to sleep with no motherfucking man. I'm not about to do some nasty shit. No fucked up shit. But
yo. But see, I'm so glad you brought that up, because early in this conversation, I said when we were teenagers, when we were preteens, we saw people that we knew that were given opportunities or willing to do anything to obtain access, right?
But
We're not
even,
going.
even then, but that grooming was early though. So many of them people got groomed
Okay,
early.
okay, but listen,
but
not all of them were though, because
no,
some of them
true.
were, some of them were, and some weren't.
Many were just straight up victims of this shit.
But
it
dude,
still had the same effect.
Listen to this shit. The crazy part about it is, those two groups of people wound up hanging together anyway,
Regardless.
because they were like-minded. And what's crazy is they've been childhood friends from the beginning, which is so fucking weird, because one of them, we knew that he was going to be a straight up boule reptilian. The other handful of people that were willing to do this Tu Wong Fu-iness, you know what I'm saying, were like, yo, y'all, all you dudes hang together, and you all are willing to do anything to get ahead. Now, the crazy part about it is like, you and I were Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Like, no motherfuckers didn't even know, you know what I'm saying, like, our affiliation. They didn't know, like, none of this shit, you know what I'm saying?
Like a nigga would talk about you, and I'm saying it right there, like, that's my brother. You do, but I wouldn't say that. I just let you know, like, man, don't fuck with that nigga.
But listen,
like,
but check it out. So then, my whole point is that we would, the type of dudes that we would move between different social groups. We knew people in all these different groups. And so because of that, we had this catbird seat to see these weird interactions of these fishbowl people whose lives were just televised for the rest of the neighborhood or the rest of the school or the rest of the city. You know what I mean?
Church, everybody can see, yes.
Right. And because of these like positions that we had in these social structures, we saw the craziest shit, man. And we saw the rise and fall of people, you know. But we also saw people that would just fall on their fucking face to do stupid ass shit. You know, to like, and got nothing in return. Nothing.
No, we talked about that. Like, look, what did you gain?
Nothing. You didn't get shit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and dude, it's all kind of shit, man. Like, we're not even going to go into it. But like, the stuff that we saw was so embarrassing that these dudes did, you know. And it's like, why did you play yourself like that? You know what I'm saying? Because there were cats that came before us, a lot of cool cats, you know, and we saw some of them rise and some fall. And some motherfuckers just stay where they are and they just peaked in high school and didn't go beyond that. You know, me and Duct Tape, I'm pretty sure you learn from these people's mistakes. You know, like, I would see these cats.
I'm a people watcher. Yeah, I observe. Just because I don't speak on it don't mean I didn't see it.
I would watch all this shit, man. Yeah, I would watch all of it and be like, that's how you living? That's how you gonna do it? All right, dog. Yeah. That shit ain't for me, homeboy.
Nope, that's not my cup of tea.
No. But to round this all out, what I really want to say is that because I have this spiritual awareness, because I know God, I don't believe in God, man. I know God. See, There's no doubt. I don't have that doubt because I know it. And when I tell you I had an audience with the Creator, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have experienced that, because
your mom trained you early on in spiritual warfare, and it's something that's hard to explain to people because you look at it as religion. But my mom would have conversations with me. I'm like, "Hey, Mom," like I would ask my mother questions like, "Hey, why do we hum in church?" My mom said, "That's easy because the devil doesn't know who you're singing to." That's not, look, but my mom was taught that by her grandmother. That was passed down. So what you don't understand is that they didn't tell me that in church. I'm like, "Mom, why do we hum in church?" Because she said, when you start humming, Satan gets jealous because he wants you to sing to him, and he don't know if you're singing to him or to God. It makes him weak. I'm like, how do you learn? But what book she get that from? She don't tell, you know.
That's discernment, boy.
But that's the whole thing, is that you don't learn that shit in Sunday school. You don't learn that shit at church. You learn that shit from your mom and your ancestors. So when your mom was reading tarot and telling me stuff, like you can't. I don't know how to describe the shit. What I'm saying is those are the lessons prepare you spiritually, and that's the armor of God they talk about. That is the breastplate your mother gave you. That's the helmet that your mother gave you. And so when you get older, you see certain shit, you recognize. I told you, my wife's homeboy went through some shit. This is before we were married, where he went to Def Jam South, and it was straight up fucking satanic situation. And I remember because you know the story. My roommate Mickey was playing Dante's Inferno, and there was a map, and it was different levels of hell. And at the very end, there's a big cauldron, and there's souls in it. And he's doing shit. Well, homeboy goes to him and his boys are trying to get a record contract, so they go to. And his brother warns me. He said, "Look, they'll pay for you to come down, but if you don't sign, they don't pay for you to come back." He gets down there with his boys. He said, literally, that building was an upside down Dante's Inferno. He said one level was this, one level was that, one level was this. He said you get to the top, and this dude, even though it's an office building, he has an apartment on the top floor. And while he's talking to them about their deal, there's literally a big cauldron bubbling on the fucking stove. He's like, "What you cooking?" That's not important. Old boy realized, like, "Hey, this ain't for me." He leaves. The other niggas don't. So his brother, he's like, "Bro, can you send me $400 for my bus ticket home? I got to get back from Atlanta to Nashville." I'm not making this story up. So why is a motherfucker in an office building with an apartment on the top floor cooking some shit? Because he's soul cooked. You got to have discernment. You got to recognize that shit. Nigga, that's when you start humming. When you're in a situation like that, you start humming, and you see that motherfucker start to squirm, and you know that you experienced some shit. What I'm saying, like I said, I'm not talking about Roscoe's mom or that, but I'm trying to tell you, we were prepared by our parents for this shit. And these other niggas, unfortunately, their parents didn't prepare them. That's why they was giving up booties and doing drugs and chasing shit they should have been chasing. You know, that's why these motherfuckers, you know, are in the Republican Party or in the Democratic Party doing shit that you wouldn't imagine. And that's why these motherfuckers got wrapped up. Like, literally, my ex, one of her baby dads, she's like, "I don't want my son over there." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Because that motherfucker, his family had something to do. They got wrapped up in that shit, that Franklin Credit Union shit." And she's not worried about him, but if suppose the motherfuckers, something was done to them and they never got that shit treated, you know what I'm saying? They never got the therapy or the healing that they needed. Now, they R. Kellyan motherfuckers, because the first thing they tell you, something was done to R. Kelly. That's why he does something. I'm like, yeah. That might have been how he started doing it, but that nigga just like taking advantage of people. He's a power magnet. He's power hungry, excuse me. And so, sorry, I got on a tangent. Look, motherfuckers, you need that training to get you through this life. I get it that you might not get it in the beginning when you're a child, but as you're an adult, you're going to see that shit, and that's just going to serve you and keep you from going to hell, or keep you from blessing, or keep you from selling your soul for money, or keep you from making these decisions that we were warned about as children.
Allahu Akbar. God is great. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Allah back.